Howdy folks, it's RJ Helms here, and I'm here taking a look at a game called Software Inc. I'm not going to do a let's play of this. This is just going to be kind of a look, and I'm going to talk about what I like and dislike about this game, and just kind of where it is and what I see the potential being. This isn't really a review. The game's in early access, and I don't really want to take this channel into the realm of being a reviews channel, but just wanted to talk about this game because I'm really interested in it without necessarily going into the depth of a let's play, because I don't really know what I'm doing well enough to intelligently cover it in that way. So this is a game that came to my attention just from some buzz that I've been seeing. It's been showing up on like curator feeds in Steam and on a couple other YouTube channels, so I picked it up. It's a game that's currently in early access. It's developed by a company called Coredumping, which I believe is just a one-man development team. And this, like its name suggests, is kind of one of the games in the like software development tycoon sort of market. And that genre I've always kind of had mixed feelings about. It appeals to me a lot, especially thinking back to Game Dev Story by Kairosoft on mobile. That's really kind of, in my mind, the pinnacle of the genre. There's also Game Dev Tycoon on PC, which I think rightly or wrongly has a lot of reputation of being pretty much just a clone of Game Dev Story, changed just enough to not be on obvious copy. And one thing that I feel, and I've seen a bunch of other criticism about those games, and a lot of others of the similar nature, is they lack, at the end of the day, quite a bit of depth. There's a couple things you can do. You can make your products, but a lot of it's just kind of watching progress bars going and clicking here and there to manage a couple things. And so Software Inc. is interesting because it seems like the developer is really going a long way to address that lack of depth. So there certainly is the element of it of watching progress bars go as tasks are completed. But there's a lot more things that you can do in this game that you can't do or couldn't do in some of the older software tycoon, so to speak, games. And so I'm just going to talk first about some of the things I really like about this game. Like I say, the depth is there in spades. One thing is you can actually design and manage your buildings itself. If you think back to the two other games that I mentioned, in those, like, your workspace is kind of just something that's given to you. It's got a certain capacity for a number of employees. You can maybe move people around or whatever, but as time goes on, it's just an event that happens in the game. You get more space. In Software Inc., you get to actually lay out your buildings. You get to decorate them, place your furniture. You have to manage cleaning, ventilation systems, maintenance of your equipment. And that's really interesting. It lets you really get a sense of seeing your company growing as you start with just a small building that's maybe got 2 rooms, and it grows to be bigger and bigger, and you start after managing parking spaces and possibly multiple buildings and multiple floors. That's a really rewarding element that I really like to see is managed in this game. There's also quite a bit of depth as far as the way that the staff and projects are managed. You can put your staff on a bunch of different teams. You can assign them to specific roles, and every staff has a bunch of different specialties, and in that a bunch of different skills. So, for example, a given staff member might be especially skilled as a designer, but in then that even more specifically, say a good designer of network systems or of 2D graphics or things like that. And then those specialties and those skills can improve as people use them. And then there's even beyond that, you have a whole range of different products that you can make. Like in the Game Dev Tycoon and Game Dev Story, obviously you're just making games, so you can make systems, things like that. But here you can make operating systems, you can make game engines, you can make kind of intermediate tools like visual and audio software, you can make browser games, you can make antivirus software, and it's really cool to have that kind of breadth to it, that you're not just making games. You can kind of take your company down whatever route you think is best, and different products are of course different sizes. Making an operating system is a fairly huge undertaking. Making a browser game might be a comparatively smaller one. And even up beyond that, you have the element of running the actual server farms and data centers. You can place servers and link them together to make distributed or parallel systems, and then manage your source control. If you have browser games or auto updates functionality for your antivirus or operating system software, you actually have to manage the servers that equipment runs on, or the servers that software runs on. And you can even go so far as to open up your own online distribution service. So there's a huge amount of depth here. There's a lot of potential and a lot of things that you can do. But that actually, I think, in extent, at least as the game exists today, like I say, I'm not really doing a review here, so I have some criticisms of this game as I'm playing it right now, but it's important to keep in mind that this is way, way, way in early access. It's still in alpha, and so I have a lot of faith that a lot of these things are going to be addressed as time goes on. Yeah, but the first thing is that a lot of the depth it's not really fully realized. Like, it's there, but you can't really do too much with it. So for example, like I said, you can assign people to teams, and you can assign people to the individual roles on the teams. I mean, assigning people to teams works really, really well, I think. You can have a core team, you can have a support team, you can have an operating systems team, you can have a games team, and you can give them projects. I find what works really well in my own games is to start with just a core development team and a marketing team, and then later on add more things as my company gets big enough to start wanting to develop multiple products at once. But beyond that, you can actually assign people to the specific roles on the team, and I find that falls a little bit flat. And the reason for that is because there doesn't really seem to be much of a time when it's a good reason to do that. And it's because, like, if I say, for example, this employee in my company is just going to be a programmer. They might have some design skills, they might have some art skills. When I say they're just a programmer, because that's what they're really, really good at. If the team that they're on is in the design phase, or is working on a project where all the development's done and it's just the art remaining, that employee is just going to sit there. They're not going to do any of those things because you've told them not to. And so, even though they have those skills and they could contribute them, they're just going to be sitting idle. And I found if you don't do that, or you maybe just assign your person with your best leadership skills to be a lead and leave everybody else at any role, I mean, they'll do what they're best at first if there's work for that to do, and then they'll move into other jobs as that becomes the only work available. So it doesn't really seem like there's much of an incentive. I mean, maybe I'm just playing wrong, but it doesn't seem like there's much incentive to actually assign people to specific roles, because it just puts unnecessary slack and reduces the productivity of your team. Similarly, there's a ton of information in this game. Like I said, there's there's the different products you can make. All those products have different features, and those can be dependencies. So, for example, if I want to make a game that has this type of functionality, say it's a 3D game or it's an online game, it's got to be built with an engine that supports those features, and then in turn, that engine has to be built on an operating system that supports those features, which is really cool. There's a ton of potential there, but it's actually really, I found, hard to see what those things are and to actually plan all the way through. A lot of that information is kind of inaccessible. It's mostly there in the UI, but you've got to kind of click around, and I found as I've been playing, it's a lot more time effective, just kind of trial and error. Say, okay, here's the most popular operating system. Oh no, that doesn't support the features I want for this product. Okay, so I'll choose the next one. Okay, that does support more features, so I'll go with that one. Even when it's some of my own software up there, it's kind of hard to juggle all that, and it's not always the easiest to get at the information that you want. Similarly, I find that a bit of the feedback on why things succeed and fail is a little bit shady. It wasn't an uncommon experience when I've been playing that every single product that I release gets really, really positive reviews. But then when they get to market, some will succeed, some won't, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly why that's happening. If it's because the market demand for what I created isn't there, if it's because my company doesn't have a reputation in that sector, it's a little bit obtuse, and I think it would go a long way if that was clarified and a bit easier to get at in the UI. And there's one more thing that I found a little bit unbalanced in this game, and that's that it kind of seems like you're in two states. The start of the game, you've got absolutely no money. That's when it's just the you in a garage sort of phase, and there's a lot of grinding. I found of just doing contracts or doing small products that are practical for one person to develop, kind of in the hopes that one strikes it big. And that can take, especially on the higher difficulty levels, can actually take a really, really long time, or at least so it seems. And then once you reach that point where you've got, say, $200,000 in the bank, and you can start hiring a bunch of really skilled staff and not having to worry about making the payroll month to month, and then working on more ambitious products, at that point you're kind of in a state where you've just got so much money that it doesn't matter. And at that point, the kind of actual business management element of it kind of recedes into the background, and there's not really too much to take its place. So one thing that I think could be an improvement as this game goes through its early access and in towards its final release is to actually really, really work on balancing that. But I don't want to give the impression that this game isn't a lot of fun. I've been playing it a lot since I picked it up earlier this week, and it's got a huge amount of potential, and it's actually pretty fun as it is. There's quite a few rough spots, but like I said at the start of this video, it really aims to provide all the depth that a lot of these software dev games in the past have been lacking, and I think it's well on its way to succeeding at that, especially considering it's developed by one person. At this point, I mean, like a lot of the games that are really do early access well, it's there, it's playable, it's fun, but really what you're doing is helping to support the huge amount of potential that it has, rather than it being, either a cash grab to develop something that's never actually going to be great, or to just kind of fund something that's actually almost finished and maybe doesn't need to go for that model. This is very much, I think, an appropriate example of early access done well. So just one kind of final note, I'd like to talk for a little while of kind of what I'd like to see out of the rest of this early access cycle. What would, in my mind, would make this a game that, when it does kind of reach version 1.0 and actually comes out as a finished game, what would really, really help it reach its potential? So the first thing is really just more and better graphics and sound. Right now, there's no music in the game, the sound effects are pretty minimal and repetitive, and a lot of the graphics are they're functional. It's not hard to tell what things are, and the UI isn't terrible, and it's got a charm to it, but it's not as polished and certainly not as kind of modern looking as I think it could be, and that would might go a long way to just make the very first impression of this game feel a lot better. And that is actually in the early access description on Steam. What the developer says is the primary thing that they're looking for with early access is to raise some funds to bring in some outside talent for graphics and sound, and I think that's a great priority. The next thing is just to go back, like I mentioned, to make information easier to get at, and just improve the usability and the of the UI and the findability of information in it, because that would make a lot of the depth more important. Maybe get some more detailed reviews about how products they've released are going to fit on the market. It's great for a product review that you get just to be 2 sentences of boilerplate text to tell you, okay, your quality was excellent, for example. But to say, okay, and this is a crowded market, or this competitor is going to get in their way, that might go a long way. And also just kind of tweaking easier ways to find out what to discover the features that products have and the dependencies between them and what's on the market that meets those things, to make it kind of easier to work back from your goal. If you say, okay, I want to push up my games development, for example, to move into the world of 3D or to move into the world of online games, just to be able to trace back, okay, what software that are dependencies that lets me do that is on the market, what do I need to make, how do I get from A to B, would make that depth a lot more realizable and get a lot more value out of it, rather than just kind of responding to what's out there already, and kind of doing the best you can with limited information. And another thing with that would be just to see, lots of times you get notifications about, for example, this employee is having trouble concentrating, or this employee is complaining about a slow computer, or some equipment that you have is not functioning properly, needs to be maintained. Even just having those notifications be clickable, so you can say, okay, an employee is saying they're having trouble concentrating. When you've got a big team, if you've got 30 or 40 employees, it can be a little bit arduous to say, okay, who is having trouble concentrating? Why did I get that pop up, and what can I do about it? So if you just had that when it popped up, if you click on it and it would zoom right in on that employee, it might be a bit more apparent why that has popped up. And that also would go a long way to make the staff management side of it a bit more, I don't want to say deeper, because it is already pretty deep, but a bit more usable and a bit more discoverable. And then finally, just one thing that, I really like the angle that this game is going on, that it's not just a game dev tycoon sort of thing. The world of what you're making is a lot bigger than just games or whatever. You can, all the tools you can make. And I really think there'd be a lot of potential in seeing that expanded and actually making, in some ways, making the way that the game plays different if you do those things. So maybe making the marketing demands different, or maybe the just the lifespan of products, or the distribution channels, or things like that. That if you want to make a game or a company, for example, that makes video games, the way the game plays might be pretty different and possibly easier or harder, or requires different things to put your attention to than if you're a company that makes operating systems or antivirus software, or just you name things that are in the game, or possibly databases or office software, things like that. I think there'd be a lot of potential there. So just to sum up, this is Software Inc. It's a game by Coredumping. It is currently in early access on Steam, and it's got a lot of potential. That's really what I want to draw attention to here. I'm not going to give it an ultimate thumbs up or thumbs down or anything like that. It's still in very early days of early access, and it's got a ton of potential, but it's not safe to say whether that's going to be realized or not. So I'll just say that it's worth keeping an eye on. I highly recommend taking a look and just seeing what you think and if it's something you might be interested in, and not necessarily picking up the game right now, but certainly watching it and seeing where it goes and if it does realize that potential. I'll put a link to the Steam page for the game in the description below, so if you haven't seen it, you can go there to check it out. And if you have any thoughts about this game, you can leave a comment down below and we can have a bit of a discussion. So I'm going to wrap this up here. Thanks so much for watching. If this is the sort of thing that you want to see more of on this channel, let me know. Just leave a comment. If you want me just to focus on the Let's Plays, you can do that as well. Leave a comment below. Any feedback is good to have. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.